Hey everybody, Justin here. Appreciate you checking out this video. I wanted to do this video on an article I wrote for my website called The Mathematics of Haiku. And a haiku is a poem that has 3 lines to it. The first line has 5 syllables, the second line has 7 syllables, and the third line has 5 syllables. And I would not get too dogmatic about that if you're writing poetry. That's just kind of like how it's been standardized, or American haiku, whatever you want to call it. But if you go back to the creators of haiku in Japan and so forth, they did not have this rigid structure with the syllable counts. And, one could have 4 syllables, another one have 3 syllables. They mainly wrote about nature themes, and there'd be like this aha or enlightenment moment with like a poetic turn. So I wouldn't get too dogmatic and adhere to 575 if I'm writing poetry in general. But in general, we think of kind of modern haiku as 575. That's just kind of how it is. But I had a couple questions when I was thinking, or that led to this work that I did. So I've written about maybe 3,000 poems, which can be found at this link, and about 550 of them are haiku. And I was thinking, like, how many, I mean, well before that, those numbers, I was thinking, how many possible syllable structures are there? And how many possible haikus are there? And how many of each syllable structure have I done? So I had lots of different questions that I wanted to explore, and they're kind of math problems um, involved with poetry, which are two of my um, jobs or my interests or whatever you want to call them. So I thought it was an interesting mix. So how I went about this is, if I look at the 5 syllable line, you can break down 5 in 16 different ways. And that, from math, that's called an integer composition. It's just saying, okay, how can I add up numbers to get the number 5? And I have a list here. I just enumerated out the complete list. I could have I could have just have a 5 syllable word, which is completely legit. I could have a 4 syllable word followed by a 1 syllable word, right, to add up to 5 syllables, and so on, right? And at the kind of the opposite side of the spectrum, I could have 5 1 syllable words. So that's another possibility. But I just listed them all out. And these are the only ways you can add up in integers to get the number 5. And you can play the exact same game with the 7 syllable line. Now there's going to be more possibilities intuitively, right? Because you have 7 syllables to play with now instead of 5. But you can do the same thing, and that's a good exercise to try, just to try to list those out. Or just for giggles, say the line has 6 syllables and try to list out 6 syllables, all the possibilities for that. But here's the one for 7 syllables. You get 64 possible ways you can do it, right? So that took me a little while to list out all those. And again, it's the same. I could have a 1 syllable, and then a 1 syllable, 1 syllable, 2 syllable, 1 syllable, 1 syllable, and you add up all those syllables and you get 7 syllables. Um, so that took a while. So kind of in general, if you're going to generalize this, well, let's back up one more time. For the 575 structure, there are, and I write it like this for a reason. There are 2 to the 5 minus 1 multiplied by 2 to the 7 minus 1 multiplied by 2 to the 5 minus 1, or 2 to the 4 times 2 to the 6 times 2 to the 4, and you multiply those, you get 16,384 possible syllable structures that you could do for a 575 haiku. So you can see that each time you add a syllable to it, it increases the number of possible syllable structures by a multiple of 2, by a factor of 2. For example, for the 5 syllable line, we had 16. If you were going to do it with 6 syllables, you'd get 32 possible decompositions of the number 6. And for 7, you get 64. So it went from 16 to 32 to 64, and so on. Okay. So I wouldn't even want to try. 7 was bad enough. I would not want to try to list it out for 8. Okay. That would that'd be pretty difficult. Um, okay, but that's just the syllable structures. So that answered the first question. How many syllable structures are there? The second question was how many haikus are possible? So to do that, I need to know more than just the syllable structure. I need to know the words I have available to use for each syllable count. What words do I have to fill in, right? So for example, of the 5-syllable line, let's just say we use a 2-syllable word and a 3-syllable word. I need to know how many 2-syllable words there are, and I need to know how many 3-syllables words there are, and go from there. So to answer that question, I needed to download some dictionaries or a dictionary. And a lot of the dictionaries have more information than just the word and the definition. They might have the parts of speech, examples of usage, and I found ones that had the syllable count, which was extremely helpful because it kind of answered my question. So when you take the total number of 2-syllable words, total number of 3-syllable words, multiply it together, the 2-3-syllable structure for a 5-syllable line itself has millions of possibilities. If you look at the 1, 1, 1, 2, that has trillions, because there's so many 1-syllable and 2-syllable words. So I did that for all different types of syllable structures, for the 5, for the 7-syllable line, and multiplied everything together, added everything up, and I only had to consider the word list for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 syllable words. I didn't have to consider 8-syllable words because that wouldn't help me for a 575 haiku, right? But even doing that, and I think I used even very small word lists. I mean, I use kind of standard dictionaries, which I would say are like kind of medium to maybe small side of number of words. I think you can get like a professional dictionary and the numbers just go up incredibly, very uncommonly used words, but you could probably find some dictionaries with more words than the ones I use. But even so, doing that, I calculated the total possible haikus of over 10 to the 66th power, which is something like more than the number of atoms in the universe, right? I have a link to my haiku spreadsheet there just to show kind of those steps that I went through. So I thought it was interesting because it's like first of all, it combines math and kind of maybe probability and statistics, and also it combines poetry, which are two of my favorite things, like job and my kind of passion or hobby, whatever. And I also think it should be some encouragement to people because say you see a really nice poem or you see just to generalize, some really cool creative work of art, and you're like, man, I could never do that. I just give up, or I would say keep going because there are so many possible creative things that can be done, written, made, drawn, whatever, to explore. I mean, again, random haiku, the haikus, there's over 10 to the 66th possible ones, probably more than that. Actually, it's probably much more than that once you take. I only took the English language into consideration. Combine, words from other languages. Again, you're way over that number. But anyways, you have the possibility, very real possibility of, discovering one of those yourself. Being the creator of one of those awesome, really, really amazing pieces of art or creativity. And it's absolutely possible because so much of that space has been unexplored. Also, it's important to note that 10 to the 66 I consider all possibilities of combinations of words. Obviously, a lot of those are going to be just complete gibberish that would not be good for a poem or a haiku, whatever. So, the number's a little smaller, of course, because you're going to put words together in a certain way, right? You're not just going to randomly assemble. But nevertheless, I don't know how to implement that mathematically, so I just did a total possible count. It's still going to be very, very, very large numbers. And I wanted to show too, the last thing I was interested in was, okay, of these syllable structures, like the fives and the sevens, which ones have I written, which ones have I done in my poetry? So I have this haiku syllable distribution article where I literally go through the haikus I've written. At the time, I had only written about 430 of them. I'm up to about 550 now. But I literally just categorize all the syllables I've done. I mean, all the the haikus I've done, the syllable patterns, and made a bar chart. So of the distribution of the 5 lines, you could see most of them are the 1 1 1 1, 1 1 1 2, 2 1 1 1. Rarely is just a 5-syllable word used. I think tends to make sense. We tend to use maybe words on the smaller side. And then of the 7 line, again, you have lots of ones over on this right side over here. But I think it varies a bit more. There's just lots more choices to choose from. Some seem pretty rare, like a 6-syllable word followed by a 1-syllable word. There were more combinations that were rare, I thought, when I looked at that. Okay, but I hope this article, I hope it was interesting. I thought combining math and poetry was interesting. And like I said, I thought that since there's so many creative possibilities out there, that it's actually a good space for you to explore, because you could be one of the people absolutely that creates something that's just amazing. So, but thanks for checking out this video. I'll see you next one. Bye bye.